The Bills have traded Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans. How that could impact the Rams, that's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know down below. Do you think that Kupp will have a big revenge season in 2024? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, SI, Dodgers Nation, the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just finished his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, will Kupp have a revenge season? He's been working out with Puka Nacua. Got the latest on that. Also, Carson Wentz signs with the Chiefs. Should the Rams have signed Carson Wentz? And how the Stefon Diggs trade could impact the Rams in the draft. That's coming up. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, so Travis, we had a big trade in the NFL.
Yep.
The Buffalo Bills, they traded Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans. The Buffalo received a 2025 second-round pick in exchange for Diggs. And, of course, Diggs was one of the best receivers in the league for quite some time. And good for them, but how does this impact the Rams? How this could impact the Rams is if the Buffalo Bills want to find a way to get a plug-and-play wide receiver in the NFL draft, they're going to have to trade up. They're currently sitting at 28. The Rams, of course, hold the number 19 pick. Of course, the big names, the Rome Odunzes, the Malik Neighbors, the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, they're going to be off the board, but you could have guys like Xavier Worthy, Mitchell Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey. Those guys could be available, and the Rams could possibly trade down, make a trade with the Bills. So that's definitely something that could be on the table for the Rams to take advantage of.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot that they find themselves in. And like we've talked about a lot on the pod, Doug, is that the Rams have optionality, like real optionality for the first time in a really long time, that they have a first-round pick. And, you know, it's not a top 10 pick, but it is a top 20 pick. And if there's a guy on the board that somebody behind you really wants to get at, this is an opportunity for you to move back, collect more picks. And, you know, I would like to see the Rams pick in the first round if they have a player on their board that they think is, like you said, a plug and play guy, you know, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's the place where they need to get a little bit better. But I also think that Les Snead has really shown that, you know, giving him more picks is a good thing, that they do really well deeper in the draft, that once you get outside that second or third round or so, that's when they can really start to do some damage. And the more shots you have at it, the better your odds are. So if there's not somebody that they see at 19 that they absolutely love and they want to move back into the 20s or the late 20s or even out of the first round, I don't think that's necessarily a terrible idea. Now, if they have somebody, you know, maybe that's in the mid-teens that they see, maybe they kind of do the thing we're talking about with Buffalo and they move up a little bit for an opportunity to get a guy that they like right there. But I like where they sit. There's a lot of options on the table for them.
Yeah, let's not forget, they got Steve Avila high in the second round last season. So if they're able to get a second-round pick, maybe a fourth-round pick, a late day 3 pick, something like that, and try to up their picks, maybe you consider going that route. I mean, we look at the compensatory picks that the Rams have. They have enough to really fill out this roster. It's just about being selective and getting the guys that they think can provide value. I mean, look at this draft as a whole. I mean, there's been a lot of talk. Maybe 19 or 20 of these guys have true first-round grades.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting at 19, I think the Rams are at a spot where they realize, okay, at 19, who's going to fall into our lap? And will Leatu Latu be available? Will Chop Robinson be available? Will be available past 19 so you could trade that pick and kind of move down and still get him? Or do you want to move up for a Byron Murphy II out of Texas, the best interior lineman available, a Rome Odunze, the wide receiver like we talked about on this show? So I think it really comes down to, do you want to trade up and kind of swing bigger or kind of move down? I think 19 really might not be the most advantageous spot for the Rams team right now.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up because, obviously there are going to be 32 first-round picks, but that doesn't mean there are 32 first-round talents. That there may not be. Some years there are 40 or more. There are guys that you can get early in the second round that in some years would go in the first. Like you said, this is not a particularly deep draft as far as, that elite first-round talent goes. So, again, I'd be really surprised if they just sit there and make the selection at 19. I think that both moving up and moving back are on the table for them. Just from a fan standpoint, it's something that would be fun to watch. It's always fun to watch your team move up as opposed to move back is probably more judicious and a little bit more of a long play. But that idea that you're moving from 19 to 12 or 13 to get a chance to grab a guy that maybe, the casual has heard of is always very exciting.
And it just doesn't feel like Les Snead, right? To just take the pick that he's given at 19. No. He's too much of a mad scientist. He's too clever to do something like that. So I think he pulls something out of his hat and finds a way to get clever with this and get the best players on this roster. Hopefully he makes a good trade. Hopefully he's not like the lady last night who traded the Shohei Ohtani home run ball. What was it, 2 hats, a bat? I mean, you're not doing that trade, right?
That is so disappointing. You have your hands on a Shohei Ohtani home run, the first home run he's hit as a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and you traded it for a sack of Magic Beans. At least get an autographed jersey. At least get a picture with the guy. She or he, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, they got taken to the hoop. That was a bad trade. They need a better agent.
And you know what no one ever does in this situation? How about just ask for cold hard cash, right? Like, give me like $30K, you know what I mean? Or give me the Porsche that you gave to Joe Kelly's wife. I mean, come on now. I mean, a couple of jerseys, that's free. The jerseys and the bat, all that's free for Shohei Ohtani, right? So, look, I'm just saying, I think that Les Snead would have made a better trade than that. I think he would have probably traded down, got a couple other things. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that wasn't the move right there. But as far as this Rams team goes,
for a couple of Teoscar Hernandez bats later in the first round, and then maybe swap it out for a Tyler Glasnow glove or something. You got to get a whole bunch of stuff as opposed to one or two things.
He would have made moves for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Probably got like a Josue DePaula bat that's going to be worth a lot in like 6 years from now, something like that. That feels more like Les Snead. But coming up next here on Locked On Rams, Carson Wentz signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. Should the Rams have signed Wentz over Garoppolo? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees applies. And now some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube for free, Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, Travis is on ESPN. He's not screaming all day. Come on,
not
now.
often. Occasionally.
Just
I will
sometimes, right?
scream once in a while. If it's something about tacos or Shohei Ohtani, I might scream. Otherwise, I'm pretty composed.
Or the guy that knew more about LeBron James, right? At basketball.
Or that guy, yeah. Well, he didn't like his shooting form, Doug.
Didn't like
the
the
man
shoot.
has
That's a
scored
T-Rod classic right there.
points, but yeah, he didn't like his form. He only scored. Imagine how many he'd have if he shot correctly.
I know. Can you imagine that? LA Fitness baller giving the advice?
Right.
For sure.
Exactly.
But here in our second segment, though, a couple days ago, Carson Wentz, he signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. I had a chance to really talk about this one, and really interesting spot for Carson Wentz. He signs a 1-year deal, just like Jimmy Garoppolo did with the Los Angeles Rams. But you thought that maybe Carson Wentz would be able to go the Baker Mayfield route, where a team would go give an opportunity to start, see what he has, see if he can really get his career back on track. But, of course, he's playing behind Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. If you see Carson Wentz in Kansas City, it's either something went really, really wrong with Patrick Mahomes, or two, they've clinched the division, they've clinched the league, and that's when you're going to see him in there. So it's not like he's going in there for a big opportunity, but the question is, should the Rams have signed Carson Wentz? It's pretty interesting because Wentz definitely had success there in Week 18. He beat the San Francisco 49ers, but clearly McVay felt better about Garoppolo, his knowledge of the playbook, and him just as a more stable backup quarterback option.
Yeah, I think that's the answer right there, right? That Sean McVay got a chance to see Carson Wentz up close for, a couple of months, and they decided to go in a different direction. That has to mean something, I think. And look, let's just put it in there as what it is. Jimmy Garoppolo has played better in the NFL more recently than Carson Wentz has. I know that a lot of people are down on Jimmy G, and I get it that he's not one of these guys that you're thrilled to have as your starting quarterback. But the fact of the matter is, the guy wins about 2 out of every 3 games he starts. He took a team to the Super Bowl. He took a team to the playoffs year after year after year and did a really good job. The Raiders stink that got on him. I think that's more the Raiders than it is Jimmy G than anything else. His teammates seem to really like him. His teammates in San Francisco responded to him in a real meaningful way. The rub on Carson Wentz was always that maybe that wasn't true. Now, there was nothing about that in L.A., but I think that the Rams very clearly said, no, we'll take him instead of him. Has to mean something. Now, Carson Wentz lands on his feet for sure. In Kansas City, that is a really good look at another Super Bowl for him. Of course, Wentz had one as the starter turned backup in Philadelphia to Nick Foles a couple of years ago. But I think the Rams are in a great spot at backup quarterback for the first time in a really long time. And I think Jimmy G is exactly the right guy. I wish Carson Wentz a good job. He was here. It was peace of mind while he was here, knowing that if he had to come in, that he would have been a capable backup. But I think they got their man in Garoppolo.
And Sean McVay said himself when he was asked about going with Jimmy G over Carson Wentz, he said that Jimmy G was, quote, more familiar with the system. So that to me is an absolute massive, bright red flag. The fact that Carson Wentz was in your organization for almost 2 months, but Jimmy G was more familiar with the system. And also he mentioned that you had to have a limited playbook with Carson Wentz. So those to me are red flags. And also on top of that, yes, Carson Wentz, he performed well there in Week 18. He actually set the Rams record for most rushes by a quarterback in a game with 17. He had 17 rushes for 56 yards. Guess what, Travis? That's not sustainable. Okay, no, that isn't sustainable.
No, look, Wentz is a big physical guy. We saw him do that against San Francisco in the last week that you talked about, where Wentz was, whether it was in Philadelphia, whether it was in Indy, whether it was in Washington, that this was not a Sean McVay style offense. Kyle Shanahan doing what he did in San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo is a lot more similar to what the Rams are doing than anything that Wentz had been asked to do. What Sean McVay puts together offensively is not easy. It takes a certain type of football mind. And if you kind of speak the language, you can drop in and probably pick it up a little more easily than if you're coming from an offense that is as different as it is for Carson Wentz. And look, when we've seen this offense be at its best with the Rams, with Matthew Stafford, with Jared Goff even, the ball needs to be thrown accurately. I don't know if that's Carson Wentz's greatest strength. I think Garoppolo is going to be a guy that pulls in. And look, hopefully, D-Mac, we never have to talk about this. Hopefully, like you said with Mahomes, we're in victory formation, or you're up by 25 points with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, something like that. That we don't have to see this guy very often. But I like having Garoppolo on the team. I really, really do.
Yeah, I think for Wentz, you could probably make the case that, okay, if Matthew Stafford were to miss the remainder of the season, maybe there's a world where Carson Wentz has a higher ceiling for what he can do for that team. You go out there, you run him 15, 17 times a game. You kind of just treat him like a rented car, right? And you kind of go with him from that standpoint. But I think that Garoppolo gives you a little less variance as a backup quarterback. And I also think that the Rams organization knows that I don't care if it's Jimmy G or Carson Wentz. If Matthew Stafford goes down, this team doesn't have a chance of contending. I mean, maybe a very small chance, but they know that that's how their bread is buttered with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, Stafford obviously is the most important player on the team right now with the retirement of Aaron Donald. That goes, he's their most important player by a mile. But I'd stop. Look, you need Matthew Stafford, period. But Jimmy G wins, man. I know that it's weird to say he wins. He just shows up and he wins a lot of games. He missed one pass in the Super Bowl. That pass is on the money. San Francisco beats Kansas City in that Super Bowl. I know he missed him, and I know that that's part of the problem, but I don't think you're dead. I think you're in trouble, but I think if you had to play a month or so with Jimmy G, I think he's the guy for the job, and I don't know if the same would have been said for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if he hits that past Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl, you're talking about a guy that wins a championship. And yeah, like I said, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's still a massive upgrade to anything the Rams have had in the last couple of seasons, so you feel better about that. But I think that this offense, you got to score a ton of points. This got to be a top 5 offense for this team to truly compete. I'm not so sure that Jimmy G at this stage of his career is capable of a top 5 offense the entire regular season and the postseason. But guess what? I think Matthew Stafford's in a good spot. And I think the offensive line, the way it's been completely rebuilt, essentially, is going to put him, especially with the running game of Kyren Williams, everything really is built for Matthew Stafford to stay vertical, put up a bunch of points, and really end his career in the next couple seasons on a very, very high note. But coming up next here on Locked On Rams, Cooper Kupp, he is putting in work this offseason. He's working with Puka Nacua, and Puka Nacua thinks he's going to have a big revenge season. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
The Gametime app, is it on your phone yet? It should be, because if you're looking for last-minute tickets, if you're looking for great tickets, right? If you're looking for Major League Baseball tickets, Gametime is the place to go, because Gametime, I should say, is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Plus, the prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and, of course, their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, right? It is so easy. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You're going to save a ton of money. There are flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And let me tell you about eBay. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
And we are off running here on Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there. We appreciate you watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Want to give a shout out to my man over here, Mopar Missile Division. I was talking to you about this a couple weeks ago, Travis. Thank you, Doug and Travis, for doing such a good job covering the Rams for the entire Ramley. I have a seizure disorder that affects my memory, so I save every episode of Locked On Rams because I can watch an episode, and if I have an issue overnight, I can rewatch it again to refresh my memory. Once again, guys, thank you very much. First of all, thanks for the extra views and always rocking with us. I mean, look, there's so much going on with this team. Even I kind of watch old episodes like, man, I kind of forgot about that story. So it's really a history of your Los Angeles Rams and everything that goes on from the transactions to the games. And yeah, Absolutely. We thank you for rocking with us here on Locked On Rams for sure. Now, Travis, here in our final segment, Cooper Kupp. He has been putting in work this offseason, and Puka Nacua, who, by the way, Puka Nacua is working out with Cooper Kupp, and he was wearing a Cooper Kupp t-shirt. So, I mean, you got to love that. Paying some respect to him. He's rocking that Cooper Kupp tee. And he said on the Max Crosby podcast, I've been training with Coop, so it's been good. He's on a revenge tour. He's been able to get a healthy offseason and stuff, so he's back at it. And look, obviously, this time of year, everyone is in the greatest shape of their life. Everyone's putting in work. But I will say, Cooper Kupp looks extra lean. He's motivated, and I think that that's exactly what this team needs as far as a mindset is Cooper Kupp going back out there and not having the season he had in 2021, but definitely having a healthy season and a more productive and consistent season.
So I think there are three things on the offensive side of the ball that are really interesting and important heading into the 2024 season. There is Puka, who you mentioned there, that can he get close to what he did in his rookie season? He's not going to repeat what he did because that's one of the great seasons of all time. But can it be close enough to where he's still an impact player? That's on the board. The other one is, can Kyren Williams stay healthy and be as effective as he was throughout the entirety of the season? Because he's an important part of what they do. But I think number one on the list, D-Mac, is can Cooper Kupp be Cooper Kupp again? He really wasn't. Like there were moments where he was really good. There was a game here or there where he was really good, but you didn't have that fear in your heart of Cooper Kupp the way that you had through most of his career. That Cooper Kupp always made the play. He was always open on third down. He'd always get yards after the catch. He was physical. He is sure-handed. He was all these things. He was one of the best wide receivers in football. He was an all-pro player. He wasn't that last year. So was that injury related? Is that just age? Is that just the NFL wearing a guy down? We're going to find out, because if he can get back to that top level, if he can get back to that all-pro level, Rams offense is going to hum because you have so many different weapons along. Now, if he's not, it puts more pressure on Puka, it puts more pressure on Kyren Williams, it puts more pressure on Demarcus Robinson. So his return to, number one wide receiver status is incredibly important for the Rams this season.
There's no doubt about it. I think it really starts with health. I mean, 2022, he dealt with the ankle injury. Yeah. 2023, he dealt with the hamstring injury. And I see people out there, okay, Father of Time is undefeated. He's lost his step. Maybe he's lost his step, but he can't get half of that step back is kind of my question. Also, if you can't, can you reinvent yourself? If you lost a couple ticks off your fastball, can you throw the slider more, right? Can you reinvent yourself a little bit? I think he's crafty enough, he's smart enough as a football player to just find a way to be productive for this team. Because like you mentioned, that 2021 season, it's unrealistic, right? 1,047 yards. That ain't happening again. I mean, last two seasons combined, 1,549 yards, right? And that's with missing significant time. So he's not getting 2021 Cooper Kupp is probably not walking through that door, but I still think a productive Cooper Kupp that can still help this team at this stage of his career can.
Yeah, and again, he doesn't have to be the best wide receiver in football like he was during that Super Bowl season, but he needs to be a really good one. because you have a really good one in Puka. You do have a quarterback that's going to spread the ball around. You do have a running back that, if he's healthy, has proven he can be very productive. We'll see what the tight end situation looks like this year with the Rams. No Tyler Higbee, at least for the beginning of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he were down for the majority of the season. But without Cooper Kupp drawing a ton of attention, without Cooper Kupp being the focal point for Matthew Stafford when they break the huddle, I think it's going to be a challenge for the Rams. He needs to get better than he was a year ago and 2 years ago, too.
He definitely does. By the way, Puka Nacua has also said he lost 10 pounds too. He's looking even more lean. So I don't know how I feel about that. Kind of like the big physical Puka, but I definitely think that he knows what he's doing. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. By the way, let us know down below. Do you think that Cooper Kupp is going to have a revenge season? Will he be back to the Pro Bowl? Let us know down below. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And also the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on the X at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.